Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my AM reading video for Friday, March 17th, 2023. Definitely going up on a Saturday. This week has really kind of gotten away from me. I said that in my last video too, which I just posted yesterday. Uh, I didn't even have a lot or anything after work to do. I tried to clear my schedule a bit. I had some stuff at home I wanted to get through, and I guess that ultimately took up a fair bit of time, and it's tiring to do too much, I guess, at home after a long work day. So, I don't know, just feeling a little, I don't know, less productive in a way, even though the ironic thing is I tried to clear my schedule to make myself more productive, and I do feel like it's partially just an internal thing, and that I've got a fair bit done, including reading this week. So I thought I would quickly come on here to talk about it. As is my custom, I'll start this reading video with discussing a short story in a collection I'm reading. Right now I'm in the middle of Oy CARAMBA, an anthology of Jewish stories from Latin America, edited by Alon Stavens. And the story I read this week was Solomon Licht by Yoyne Obodovsky. This man was born in a Ukrainian shtetl and then moved to Latin America, first Argentina and then Chile and then ultimately Israel. And this is kind of like a flash story. It might be like under 1,000 words. It's like about 3 pages. And it's sort of this ethereal story told by the character Solomon Licht, who is living in this unnamed city that like he's seeing is very alien and modern, and there's language about how, like, you know, the sort of the life, this artificial technological life is sucking things out of humans. And granted, this story is probably at least 100 years old. And the character is remembering his life in his, you know, his village in his shtetl town in Ukraine. And you tell through his ruminations that he is no longer there because there was a violent pogrom, which is, you know, the neighboring people, you know, getting themselves up in an anti-Semitic frenzy and attacking the Jews. And so his town no longer exists. What he, you know, describes it in like rustic detail about, you know, the opposite of this city life he's living in. And so he's ultimately, you know, obviously feels displaced, and it's, you know, a story about trauma too, about being persecuted. And I just thought, you know, for these sorts of very short flash stories, it's just about like that visceral, you know, detail and association, you know, for that fleeting moment of time, and I thought it worked pretty well. Next, I'll quickly talk about The Dead of Tamar by Nicole Dweck, which I was reading at the beginning of my last reading video, or I read the beginning of this book, I should say, and now I've finished it, and I'm a little disappointed, I guess. This is technically historical fiction. It starts in the 16th century during the Inquisition, and these converso Jews, anusim, they're Jews who, you know, are outwardly forced to convert to Catholicism and are secretly practicing their religion and trying to kind of keep their community of secret Jews alive and their money to themselves, you know, their assets to themselves, rather than being snatched up by the crown, which was a major reason, I think, why Spain and Portugal were keen to, you know, force the Jews, you know, if like in 1492 when the Jews were, you know, expelled if they didn't convert, there was like a lot about the money they couldn't take with them and that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm just saying this story is about this family that, you know, smuggles themselves out of Spain, and they end up in Istanbul, and it's like supposed to be a fresh start in a way, except in a way they go through something similar, that, you know, the Sultan and the Ottoman Empire, they're, you know, technically a lot more friendly to Jews, and you can practice openly, but when you know, make it in society, like the head of this Jewish family becomes like a big power player in Istanbul and actually works closely with the Sultan, then suddenly the Sultan also wants to bring his family in close and wants to have his daughter educated at the harem and then married to his son, and then, like, you know, it's about sort of losing that heritage all over again. So the daughter in this case is Tamar, and her father sends her off to Tiberias and pretend she's dead to try to get her out of this marriage and like try to, you know, keep Judaism alive in the family. But it's understood to be a debt that, the Sultan's family and so forth sheltered, these Jews from the Inquisition, and now by breaking this, attempted marriage, like the Jewish family owes, the Sultan's family a debt, which I don't know, I might, arch my eyebrow a little bit at this. This is where I start to lose the story a little. The author is definitely interested in, like, this idea of fate that I feel like I don't necessarily like, and it comes with a lot of heavy-handed language. And then, of course, when we get to the modern day, when, the two families, like, inadvertently, except not inadvertently, because it's all about fate, meet again, and it seems very false in a way, or shallow, and the characters aren't all that developed, especially in the second part. And, there's just, I don't like the idea of fate sort of dictating a story, because it doesn't feel as intrinsic. It's not as character focused, and I'm a character reader, and it's like this overarching sort of manipulation. Obviously all fiction is a manipulation. You're telling a story, but I like the idea of, like, interior character motivation being, the impetus for the story, rather than some hand of God from above. I guess I'm not that sort of reader. So it kind of lost me. I felt like the language was a little bit simplistic. The characterization was a little simplistic. I really never much fell in love with the modern day characters. Maybe a little, like, in an interesting way to think about, like, what the descendants of a sultan would be like in today's day and age, but it just never fully grasped me. And I wished, this, frankly, I think I would have been at least a little more okay if she stayed in the 16th century and followed this family, which actually the matriarch of the family was based off of a real person. Donna Gracia Nasi, who was actual Sephardic Anusim Jew, who was instrumental in helping other Jews, hundreds of other Jews, escape the Inquisition. It's pretty awesome, especially, that she was a woman, a medieval woman who is remembered and had that power. So grateful at least that this author brought her to my attention. The next book I started was Strangers with the Same Dream by Alison Pick. This is my booktube spin pick, no pun intended, that I played at the beginning of this quarter in January. The booktube spin is a TBR game I play quarterly. It was brought over to booktube by Rick McDonnell. And anyway, the idea is, like, you create a list of 20 books, usually in 4 categories that you want to read, and then you spin a digital wheel, and whatever number you land on is the book you read. So this was the book I got last time in my video, which I'll link down below. And this is another historical fiction book at a very different time. This is in the 1920s in Palestine, and it is following these Jewish refugees, at least in one person's case, and other Jews who have come to northern, what will be northern Israel, to create a kibbutz. And it really, like, dives into this nationalist movement before Israel was a state, and how it's, at the time it was very, at least in this context with these people, it was very entrenched in leftist and socialist thinking. The kibbutz was supposed to be this communal working space where people weren't defined by bourgeois or very individualistic tendencies, like, all of the children were communally raised and everybody has, like, a little job to do, and it wasn't supposed to be gendered, but of course it is. And it's also about tilling the land and draining the swamps, and very much also entrenched in a nationalism, in large part built out of just the violent anti-Semitism, especially going on in Eastern Europe at the time. Like, we're following a couple of characters, and one of them, Ida, recently came from Ukraine, and where her family was, her father was killed in the latest pogrom, and her, mother decided, like, you need to get out of here to, basically save your life from all of this. So it's about following this dream of having a homeland and of being safe and free, but obviously there's a lot of conditions, even like stuff like at the time, this movement, the kibbutz movement, it was very anti-religious, and so we have a lot of Jews coming from more religious backgrounds and seeing if they can give that up. And then, of course, they're also living amidst Arab villages, and there's tension there about who is allowed to live where, and just, in general, a lot of, you know, negative feeling and negative tribalism and, you know, thoughts about violence and that sort of thing, you know, that's building up. Yeah, and other than that, there is, of course, just the medical realities of living in the wilderness in the 1920s, and disease could often run rampant as they're dealing with very limited supplies in this rural setting to try to eke out a life. So yeah, we're following Ida. That's the character I'm in her head right now, and then I think we'll be following in another couple of characters' heads for this group of strangers that make the community of this kibbutz. And I'm enjoying it. I feel like it has a little bit of a tepid review, like I looked onto Goodreads, and part of it I really think has to do with people's thoughts on unlikable characters, and it really is a book that is supposed to challenge the idea of like a completely righteous kibbutz movement, which is something I've struggled with a little bit. I even hear people, you know, comparing it like well, another book I read last year kind of compared the modern settlement movement in the West Bank to the kibbutz movement, which, you know, it's I don't know. I mean, I can't say they're completely the same because, you know, they're very different time periods, different power structures behind them, that sort of thing. But I mean, obviously these people are looking for a utopia, and the whole idea Pick is trying to pick apart is that, you know, utopias don't exist. You know, people aren't perfect, the environment isn't perfect. So I find that challenging and intriguing, and I don't mind if there's unlikable characters along the way, but I know a lot of other readers are more into the escapist nature of fiction, probably a lot more than I am. You know, I mean, what most readers go to, I think, is for escapism, probably, and I'm not sure this provided for them, but I feel like for me, in trying to challenge myself, I hope it will continue to provide for me, and I will be reporting back next week. On audio, I started DAWNLANDS by Philippa Gregory. This is her third book in her Fair Mile series. This is historical fiction taking place in the 17th century, and we're following, I think of them as the Ricci family, because Eleanor Ricci is kind of the main character. By this point, she is a relatively elderly lady. She started out the series several decades back now in her 20s, and then in the second book she was more middle-aged, and now I guess she's on the end of being middle-aged. And right now she and her family live in this wharf where she is basically in charge of this import-export, I believe, business, with the ships coming in, including, you know, at this time England has its claws deep into the Americas, and her brother, in fact, lived for a while in the Americas, in New England, for the entirety of the last book. And this book, he has come home at the very beginning of the book, although one of the things he did was actually free one of the people from the native tribes who he knew that person's family, and that tribe was decimated in territorial warfare with the Europeans, and he was able to free this person from slavery and bring her with him. And in English history, this is around the time of the coronation of James II, a Stuart king. He is Catholic, and so there's a lot of unrest. This whole series sort of is predicated on the unrest of Catholic entrenchment kind of coming back into England, and whether or not England could slide back into Catholicism or not. It seems dicey, but Ned, the brother, is there because he's staunchly Protestant, and also he, you know, ties it into freedom for the people and freedom from the papacy and that particular sort of monarchy government, all that. And then other characters we're following are James Avery and his wife, and they have a long history with the Ricci family as well. But his wife is this Italian lady who is sort of she's a schemer and a reacher and a Catholic, and right now she is getting herself involved in the royal family. She's going to be a royal woman in waiting to the foreign queen. So I can see some tensions and the usual disputes happening between the characters already. I think it'll be a fascinating ride. I've been enjoying all of these books about the history and about how these characters interact with it. There's just a lot to uncover here, and hoping for the best. And the last book I have to talk about is also on audiobook, and I recently finished it. His name is George Floyd by Robert Samuels and Olorunnipa. This book is a biography of George Floyd, who was made famous, sadly, by his death about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, where he was brutally murdered by a police officer who, in fact, has now received a conviction out of that and is in jail. But the murder reignited the feelings of police brutality, especially against black and brown people, and started a movement out of that. And then, of course, this is a biography, so it goes into his life before his death. But that is all I will be saying about this book right now, because I am reading it as an official judge of the BookTube Prize. The BookTube Prize was started by Robert at Barter Hordes. The intention is to bring members of the online literary community together to judge the best in literary fiction and nonfiction published in the last year, 2022 in this case, in the US. So we start in February and March with long lists in fiction and nonfiction of 48 books apiece, and then whittle those down through 4 rounds of judging throughout the year. So we're at the very end, near the end of our first round, the octafinals, and I am reading in nonfiction Group H. And so I am going to be pitting this book against 5 others in my ballot and deciding which ones, collectively with the judges will advance. Well, I say collectively because, Robert will be tallying our scores and seeing, what we think, but we're all doing this individually and aren't supposed to be influencing each other. So that's why I won't be saying any more, except to say that I did give some preliminary thoughts about the books before I started reading, and I have more information about the BookTube Prize linked down below. So that about covers it for me now. I think I talked a little less, rambled a little less in this video than in most of my recent Am Reading videos, which is kind of nice because I got some plans this weekend. I actually do have to get moving if I want to, edit and post this, and because in a few hours I do have to leave. I'm currently at my home in the DC area, in the Maryland suburbs of DC, but my dad's birthday was a couple of days ago, so I'm going to where he is in Baltimore County to celebrate with him, so that'll be really nice. I've spoken a little bit in this video about some 2022 releases I'm in the middle of, but I do occasionally try to keep my eye on the frontiest of front list as well. I mostly read backlist. I can actually fit in very little front list, it feels like, into my annual reading, but I try to fit in a little bit because I feel like it's fun to have an eye on the end of year award stuff, which I know I'm really early worrying about that sort of thing, but I feel like my reading schedule is so packed I have to worry about it early so that I can get some titles in. And in that vein, I'll be back here on this channel to talk about my mock reads awards that I do that's based off of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and particularly my anxiety and angst about the literary fiction titles I'm juggling and seeing what I'll want to read for that. So stay tuned. If you're interested in buzzy new releases, well, not all of these will be the buzziest of the buzz, but they are very recent releases that either just came out or are coming out in the spring. So fun times ahead. Anyway, I hope you are all enjoying your weekends and getting some good reading in as well. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.